6 months after the first human ship had entered hegemony space, Ambassador Kim Tae-won stood in the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council on the neutral world of Sanctuary Prime. Representatives from over 200 species filled the vast chamber, but every eye was focused on the small delegation from Earth. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more effective. They had broken the hegemony's will to fight and created a power vacuum that the entire galaxy was scrambling to fill. The Council recognizes the Terran representative, announced Speaker Velnash, her 4 eyes blinking nervously as she addressed Tae-won. Tae-won stood slowly, deliberately taking his time. He had learned that aliens found human silence more unnerving than human words. When he finally spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the massive chamber. 6 months ago, the Velkari sent a distress call to Earth. They asked for help against an empire that had already destroyed dozens of civilizations. Today, that empire has surrendered unconditionally. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The hegemony's surrender had shocked the galaxy. For 300 years, they had seemed unstoppable. Now their emperor sat in a detention facility on Earth, awaiting trial for crimes against sentient life. The question before this council, Tae-won continued, is what happens next. Delegate Mortan of the Zelkari Confederation stood up. With respect, Ambassador, the galaxy is concerned about Terran intentions. Your species has demonstrated military capabilities that exceed anything in recorded history. What assurance do we have that Earth will not become a threat to peaceful civilizations? Tae-won smiled, and several alien delegates instinctively stepped backward. An excellent question. Let me answer it by sharing some human history. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing scenes from Earth, cities at peace, children playing in parks, scientists working in laboratories, artists creating beautiful works, farmers growing food in vast fields. This is what humans do when we are not at war, Tae-won explained. We build, we create, we explore, we dream of better futures for our children. The display changed to show human military forces during the hegemony conflict, ships ramming into enemy vessels, soldiers fighting in impossible conditions, weapons that turned entire moons into debris fields. This is what humans do when peaceful beings are threatened by those who would destroy them. The contrast was stark and intentional. Humans were capable of incredible violence, but they were also capable of incredible peace. The choice of which version of humanity the galaxy encountered was entirely up to the galaxy itself. Emperor Vaktar of the surrendered hegemony was brought into the chamber in restraints. The once proud ruler of 17 worlds looked broken and defeated. Tae-won gestured for him to approach the speaking platform. Your Imperial Majesty, Tae-won said with mock politeness, please tell the council about your experience fighting humans. Vaktar's voice was barely a whisper. They do not fight like civilized beings. They use weapons that should not exist. They employ tactics that violate every principle of honorable warfare. They treat the complete destruction of their enemies as an acceptable outcome. And yet, Tae-won replied, you are still alive. Your core worlds are intact. Your people have not been enslaved or exterminated. Why do you think that is? Vaktar looked confused. I do not understand. You are alive because humans chose to let you live. Your worlds are intact because humans decided not to destroy them. You exist at our discretion, just as every peaceful species in this galaxy now exists under our protection. The implication settled over the assembly like a heavy blanket. Humanity had not just defeated the galaxy's greatest military power. They had done it while showing restraint that the defeated enemy could not comprehend. Delegate Quintar of the Peaceful Alliance asked the question everyone was thinking. What do humans want from us? Tae-won walked to the center of the chamber. We want what we have always wanted, to be left alone to live our lives in peace. But we have learned that peace must be defended, and we are very good at defending things we care about. And if another empire arises to threaten peaceful world, asked Speaker Velnash, then they will face the same choice the hegemony faced, Tae-won replied. Submit to galactic law and live in peace, or discover why the universe created Deathworlders. Dr. Orlthan of the rescued Velkari civilization spoke from her delegation's seating area. The Velkari are grateful beyond words for Terran intervention, but we must ask, what kind of world creates beings capable of such warfare? Taywin's expression grew serious. The kind of world that teaches its children that survival is not guaranteed. Earth is a planet where everything tries to kill you. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the bacteria. Humans learned to fight because we had to fight to live every single day. He activated another display showing Earth's natural disasters. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, floods, droughts, ice ages. Other species evolved on garden worlds where life was gentle and predictable. We evolved on a world that was actively trying to eliminate us. We developed technology not to make life easier but to survive another day. We created weapons not for conquest, but because everything else on our planet was armed with claws, teeth, venom, or size. The assembly listened in stunned silence as Taywin described a world where intelligent life had survived, not despite constant threats, but because of them. This is why humans fight the way we do, he concluded. We do not fight to prove our courage or to gain honor. We fight to eliminate threats permanently, and we are very good at it because we have been practicing for our entire evolutionary history. The formal establishment of the Terran Protection Protocols came 3 days later. Earth would maintain military forces throughout the galaxy, but only to respond to threats against peaceful civilizations. Any species that attempted large-scale conquest or genocide would face immediate human intervention. Director Moon Hyok was appointed as the first commander of the Galactic Monitoring Station, a massive facility built in the neutral zone between major galactic powers. From there, human observers would watch for signs of aggressive expansion or threats to innocent populations. We are not conquerors, Moon explained to his staff of human and alien personnel. We are peacekeepers, but we keep the peace the same way we fight wars, by being so effective that nobody wants to test us. The station's first major task was processing requests for protection from smaller civilizations that had heard about humanity's intervention in the Velkari crisis. Within weeks, dozens of species were asking for human defensive pacts. Captain Yu Jamin, now commanding the patrol vessel Busan's Promise, found himself protecting trade routes that had been plagued by pirates for centuries. The pirates surrendered, without firing a shot when they learned that humans considered piracy a form of terrorism. "Why do you surrender so quickly?" Jamin asked the pirate leader during the arrest. "Because we have heard the stories," the alien replied. "Humans do not negotiate with terrorists." The galaxy's transformation was rapid and complete. Species that had spent centuries as victims of larger empires suddenly found themselves protected by the most dangerous military force in known space. Trade routes that had been unsafe for generations became peaceful highways patrolled by human vessels. But the most significant change was in how galactic civilizations thought about conflict resolution. Knowing that any major war might attract human attention, most species began settling their disputes through negotiation rather than violence. The final scene of humanity's introduction to galactic politics took place 1 year after the first human ship had left Earth. Ambassador Taywin stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council, which now included Earth as a permanent member. "The Terran delegation has a proposal for galactic peace," he announced. The chamber fell silent. When humans made proposals, the galaxy listened. "We propose that every species teach their children about Earth, about the death world that created humans, about what happens when intelligent life must fight to survive every day for millions of years." He activated a final display showing human children playing in parks on Earth. But these were not ordinary games. The children were playing war, practicing tactics, learning to think strategically about conflict. "Let them understand," Taywin said, "that for humans, preparation for total war is not military training. It is childhood. Let them know that every human child learns to think like a soldier before they learn to think like anything else." "And if they understand this, what then?" asked Speaker Velnash. "Then they will make the same choice the hegemony made," Taywin replied. "They will choose peace." The vote was unanimous. The Terran protection protocols were adopted as galactic law. Humanity became the galaxy's unofficial police force, the species that others called when problems needed to be solved permanently. As Tywin left the assembly chamber, he passed a group of young alien diplomats who were studying human military history. One of them, a Velkari named Siltara, approached him nervously. "Ambassador, may I ask you something?" "Of course. Are humans truly as dangerous as the stories say?" Tywin looked out through the chamber's massive windows at the peaceful space around Sanctuary Prime. Human patrol ships moved silently between the civilian traffic, invisible guardians maintaining a peace that had never existed before in galactic history. Admiral Ko-hyun stood on the bridge of the flagship Incheon as the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Through the view screen, she could see the distant glow of the hegemony staging area where alien forces were gathering for their final assault on the Velkari homeworld. "Tactical report," she ordered. Lieutenant Jang Miso studied her instruments. 237 hegemony vessels detected. They are arranged in a standard fleet formation around the fourth planet. No indication they have detected our arrival. "That will change soon enough," Hyun replied. "Begin Operation Nightmare." The human battle plan was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of announcing their presence and demanding honorable combat, the human fleet scattered into small groups and began hunting hegemony ships like wolves stalking deer. Captain Shin Wooben commanded the first strike force. 6 converted freighters loaded with kinetic missiles. His target was a hegemony supply convoy traveling between the outer planets. "Remember," he told his crews over the communication system, "we are not here to fight fair. We are here to win." The attack began without warning. Human missiles, simple, chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds, tore through hegemony energy shields like paper. The alien ships had no defense against weapons they considered too primitive to worry about. In 15 minutes, Wooben's force destroyed 12 hegemony vessels and captured their cargo. More importantly, they left one damaged ship intact with surviving crew members. "Why did you spare that ship?" asked his weapons officer, Ensign Park Jinwoo. "Because fear travels faster than any spaceship," Wooben replied. "Those survivors will tell their commanders what human weapons can do, and the story will get worse with each telling." This was psychological warfare at its most basic level. Humans understood that defeating an enemy's will to fight was often more effective than destroying their ability to fight. The hegemony response was exactly what human strategists had predicted. They sent a formal communication demanding that the human forces identify themselves and explain their unprovoked attack according to galactic warfare conventions. Admiral Hyun's response was broadcast on all frequencies so that every ship in the system could hear it. "This is Admiral Ko-hyun of the Terran Deathworld Fleet. We are here because the Velkari called for help. You have been killing innocent people. Now you face the consequences." The message included attachments, video footage of human wars throughout history, tank battles from World War II, nuclear explosions, soldiers fighting in the ruins of cities, footage of humans continuing to fight even when wounded, outnumbered, and facing certain death. The hegemony fleet commander, war leader Thekmore, studied the human transmissions with growing horror. These creatures fought wars that lasted for years. They built weapons designed to kill millions at once. They showed no mercy to enemies and expected no mercy in return. What kind of species develops nuclear weapons and then uses them against their own kind? Thekmore asked his staff. "The kind that treats extinction-level warfare as normal," replied his intelligence officer. The first major battle occurred near the fifth planet, when the hegemony sent 100 ships to destroy the small human force. What they found challenged everything they thought they knew about space combat. Captain Lee Kyung-ho commanded the human defense with just 20 ships, but those ships fought like nothing the hegemony had ever encountered. Instead of forming orderly battle lines, human vessels attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. Instead of targeting military ships exclusively, they went after supply vessels and command craft. Most shocking of all, when human ships were damaged beyond repair, their crews deliberately rammed them into hegemony vessels. They are destroying their own ships. Thecamore reported to his superiors. Their crews are sacrificing themselves to damage our forces. The hegemony had encountered desperate enemies before, but never an enemy that considered suicide attacks a standard tactic. Human. Kamikaze runs were not acts of desperation. They were calculated military strategies designed to maximize damage while minimizing losses. Colonel Park Yoonji's psychological warfare campaign began in earnest. Human forces started broadcasting on hegemony communication frequencies, but not with threats or demands. Instead, they transmitted human entertainment, horror movies, war documentaries, news reports about serial killers and mass destruction, music that sounded like screaming, poetry about death and violence, video games where the goal was to kill as many enemies as possible in creative ways. What is the purpose of this transmission? Thecamore demanded when his communication officers reported the strange broadcasts. They appear to be showing us their cultural products, his xenosociologist replied. This is what they create for entertainment. The impact on hegemony morale was immediate and devastating. Soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds began to refuse combat assignments against human forces. The idea of fighting an enemy that considered mass destruction entertaining was more frightening than any weapon. Dr. Yoon So-min had predicted this reaction perfectly. Most species fight wars to achieve political goals, she had explained during the planning phase. Humans fight wars because we are good at it and sometimes we enjoy it. That difference will break their minds. The turning point came when Captain Kim Ji-sung led a ground assault on a hegemony base on the system's second moon. His force of 300 human Marines attacked a fortified position defended by over 2,000 alien soldiers. The hegemony defenders expected a siege or a formal assault. Instead, human forces tunneled under their walls, attacked during their sleep cycle, and used the base's own life support systems against them. Within 6 hours, the entire base had surrendered. But the most effective part of the assault was what happened next. Instead of executing the prisoners or sending them to camps, Ji-sung's forces treated them with professional courtesy, while constantly reminding them how easily humans had defeated them. You fought well, Ji-sung told the hegemony base commander, but you fought by rules that we do not follow. We respect your courage, but we do not respect your tactics. The captured aliens were given food, medical treatment, and comfortable quarters. They were also given access to human historical records and encouraged to study human military doctrine. Within days, the released prisoners were spreading stories throughout the hegemony fleet about human capabilities, but these were not stories of brutality or cruelty. They were stories of an enemy that was completely unpredictable and utterly without limits. They fight like demons, reported the base commander, but they are not evil. They are something worse. They are competent. Admiral Hyun watched the hegemony fleet's formation begin to break apart as individual ships started requesting transfers away from the front lines. Fear was spreading through their ranks faster than any disease. Phase 2, she ordered. The second phase of the human attack was even more psychologically devastating. Instead of destroying hegemony ships, human forces began capturing them. The alien crews were treated well but were forced to watch recordings of their own defeats over and over again. Why are you doing this to us? Asked one captured hegemony officer. Because we want your friends to know exactly how we defeated you, replied Major Song Yunwoo. We want them to understand that this was not luck or accident. We want them to know that humans study their enemies and develop specific tactics to counter their strategies. The captured officers were eventually released and returned to their fleet, but they came back changed. They had seen human military efficiency up close. They knew that humanity was not just random violence and brutality. It was organized, planned, and specifically designed to defeat enemies like the hegemony. The final blow to hegemony morale came when they attempted to retreat from the system. Human forces had been waiting for this moment. As the alien fleet tried to escape, they found that humans had mined the jump points with nuclear devices. You may leave, Admiral Hyun broadcast to the fleeing ships, but you leave alone. Your weapons, your supplies, and your reputation stay here. The hegemony fleet that had come to destroy the Valkyrie limped home with less than half their original numbers and stories that would haunt their empire for generations. They had not just been defeated, they had been systematically dismantled by an enemy that treated galactic warfare like a complicated game that humans had already mastered. War leader Thekmore's final report to his superiors was simple. Do not fight the Deathworlders. Do not even threaten them. They are everything our nightmares warned us about, and they are coming for us. The shipyards above Earth had become a symphony of sparks and metal. Chief Engineer Kang Minji watched from the observation deck as hundreds of workers swarmed over the hull of what had once been a peaceful cargo transport. Now it bristled with missile tubes and armor plating that could survive impacts from space debris, traveling at incredible speeds. "How many ships do we have ready for combat?" asked Captain Han Sunho as he joined her at the viewing window. 47. Are combat ready, Minji replied. Another 112 will be finished within the week. But Sunho, these are not warships. They are civilian vessels that we have turned into weapons. They will not survive long against purpose-built military craft. Sunho smiled grimly. That depends on how we use them. Below them in the shipyard, teams of engineers were installing weapon systems that no galactic civilization had ever seen before. Kinetic cannons that fired solid metal slugs at tremendous speeds. Nuclear warheads disguised as communication satellites. Fighter craft designed to ram into enemy ships rather than engage in elegant dogfights. The Velkari data shows that most galactic weapons are energy-based, explained Dr. Park Jinho, the weapons specialist. Lasers, plasma cannons, particle beams. Their shields are designed to deflect or absorb energy attacks. But they have no defense against a chunk of metal traveling at 10% of light speed. Minji nodded. It is like bringing a gun to a sword fight, except the enemy has never seen a gun before. The real innovation was not in the weapons themselves, but in how humans plan to use them. Every other species in the galaxy fought wars like formal duels. They announced their attacks, followed established rules of engagement, and tried to minimize casualties on both sides. Humans had a different approach. Captain Shin Wubin was training the first wave of ground assault troops at a facility in the mountains outside Seoul. His soldiers were learning to fight in zero gravity, in hostile atmospheres, and in the cramped confines of spacecraft. But more importantly, they were learning to think like humans in a galaxy that did not understand human logic. Remember, Wubin told his troops, the enemy expects us to follow their rules. They expect us to announce our attacks, to avoid civilian targets, to accept surrender gracefully. We will do none of these things. Private Kim Dae-ho raised his hand. Sir, what if the enemy tries to surrender? Then we will accept their surrender, Wubin replied. After we have verified that it is not a trick, confirmed that they have no hidden weapons, and made sure that their surrender serves our strategic goals. The enemy thinks surrender ends the fight. For us, surrender is just another phase of the operation. This was the mindset that terrified the galaxy. Humans treated war not as a contest with rules, but as a problem to be solved by any means necessary. They did not fight to prove their courage or honor. They fought to win. And then they fought to make sure their enemies could never fight back. Meanwhile, in the intelligence division, Colonel Park Yoonji was developing what she called the Terror Protocol. Her team had been studying hegemony psychology and social structure, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited without firing a single shot. Most galactic species are psychologically fragile compared to humans, she explained to her staff. They evolved on stable worlds where violence was rare. They have no mental defenses against psychological warfare. Her plan was simple and horrible. Human forces would not just defeat hegemony armies. They would leave survivors who were so traumatized by the experience that they would never want to fight humans again. These survivors would return to their home worlds and spread stories that would make the entire hegemony afraid of even seeing a human ship. We are not just fighting a war, Yoonji told her intelligence officers. We are creating a legend, the legend of humanity as the galaxy's apex predator. Dr. Song Yuri had been tasked with understanding hegemony culture and communication. Her findings were disturbing and encouraging in equal measure. The hegemony rules through intimidation and superior technology, she reported. But they have never encountered a species that intimidates them back. Their entire social structure is based on the assumption that they are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. What happens when they meet something more dangerous? Asked Intelligence Officer Lim Ji-ho. Based on their psychological profiles, they will either submit completely or fight with desperate fury. Either way, they will not be able to maintain their empire's stability. The most important discovery came from Dr. Hong Seung-min, who had been analyzing the hegemony's expansion patterns. The alien empire did not just conquer worlds for resources or territory. They conquered them because conquest was their cultural identity. The hegemony exists to expand, he explained. If they stop conquering new worlds, their society collapses from internal conflicts. They cannot make peace with us even if they want to, because peace means the end of their civilization. This changed everything. Humanity was not just fighting to save the Valkyrie or protect Earth. They were fighting an enemy that could never stop being an enemy. Admiral Dongwu reviewed all the reports and made his decision. We do not try to defeat the hegemony in a traditional war. We destroy their ability to make war at all. How? Asked General Yang. By showing the galaxy what humans do to enemies who threaten innocent people. We make the hegemony an example that every other potential conqueror will remember for 1,000 years. The final preparations began. Human ships would carry more than weapons and soldiers. They would carry recordings of human history, examples of human warfare, and detailed explanations of what Earth had taught its children about survival. Captain Han Sunho looked at the first completed warship, a converted mining vessel now armed with nuclear missiles and kinetic cannons. Its hull was painted black with white letters spelling out its new name, Soul's Fury. Are we really going to do this? He asked Admiral Dongwu. The aliens asked for help from the legendary Terran Deathworlders, Dongwu replied. They are about to discover that the legend was not nearly scary enough. As the first human interstellar battle fleet prepared to depart Earth, every person involved understood that they were crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. Humanity was about to introduce itself to the galaxy, not as explorers or diplomats, but as the most dangerous thing the universe had ever seen. The awakening protocol was complete. The Deathworlders were ready for war. 3 weeks after the decision to respond to the Valkyrie SOS, Earth had transformed into something unrecognizable. Every major city buzzed with activity as factories that once made cars and computers now produced weapons and spacecraft components. The peaceful space program that had been exploring Mars and the outer planets suddenly became the foundation of humanity's first interstellar military force. Fleet Admiral Nam Dongwu stood in the command center of the newly constructed war operations, building in Seoul. Banks of monitors showed the progress of Project Deathworld, the code name for humanity's mobilization. The numbers were staggering. Every major nation had contributed ships, weapons, and personnel to the effort. Admiral, we have a problem, said Captain Han Sunho, approaching with a data pad. The conversion of civilian ships is going faster than expected, but we are running into issues with life support systems for long-term space travel. Dongwu studied the reports. Humanity's space fleet had grown from 12 research vessels to over 300 military ships in just 3 weeks. Mining ships had been fitted with missile launchers. Cargo haulers now carried fighter squadrons. Even luxury space yachts had been converted into fast attack craft. What does Chief Engineer Kang Minji say about the life support problem? Dongwu asked. She says we can solve it, but the ships will be cramped and uncomfortable. The crews will have to live like submarine sailors during wartime. Dongwu almost smiled. Perfect. Discomfort makes soldiers angry. Angry soldiers fight harder. This was the kind of thinking that separated humans from the rest of the galaxy. While other species tried to make war as comfortable and civilized as possible, humans understood that war was supposed to be unpleasant. The worst conditions were for human soldiers. The more motivated they became to end the fight quickly. Dr. Baek Jisoo arrived with her team of engineers who had been working around the clock to understand Valkyrie technology. She looked exhausted but excited. Admiral, we have made incredible discoveries, she said, spreading technical diagrams across the conference table. The Valkyrie technology is more advanced than ours, but it is also limited. How do you mean? Asked Dongwu. Their weapons are designed to disable rather than destroy. Their shields are built to deflect energy attacks. Their ships have safety systems that prevent them from ramming into each other or into planets. Jisoo pointed to specific components in the diagrams. Everything about their technology assumes that their enemies will fight the same way they do. Captain Han frowned. That makes no sense. Why would you build weapons that do not kill your enemies efficiently? Because most galactic species consider total warfare to be barbaric, explained Dr. Cho Min-seo, the xenobiologist on Jisoo's team. From what we can understand from the Valkyrie data, most intelligent species developed on worlds that were much gentler than Earth. They never needed to learn how to fight for their survival every single day. Dongwoo walked to the window and looked out at Seoul's skyline. Construction crews were working day and night to build new military facilities. In the distance, he could see the launch towers where converted spacecraft were being tested. So they fight wars like they are playing sports, he said, with rules and referees and expectations that everyone will be polite. Exactly, Jisoo replied. And when they encounter a species that fights to win rather than to prove a point, they do not know how to respond. The door opened and President Lee Min-ho entered with General Yang Tai-ho. Both men looked grim. Admiral, we have received new intelligence, the president said. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected hegemony transmissions. They are aware that the Valkyrie sent a distress call to Earth. General Yang activated a new display showing intercepted alien communications. The hegemony leaders are debating what to do about us. Some want to destroy Earth immediately to prevent us from interfering. Others want to study us first. What? Change their minds? Asked Dongwoo. We did, Yang replied. 3 days ago, we began broadcasting our response to the Valkyrie message on all frequencies. We told them we were coming to help. But we also transmitted some of our military history as proof of our capabilities. Dr. Kim Hanul, who had been monitoring alien communications, looked sick. The hegemony leaders have been analyzing our historical broadcasts. They are particularly interested in our documentaries about World War II, the atomic bombs, and modern warfare. What is their assessment? Asked the president. Hanul read from his translation notes. Quote, the feral Deathworlders possess weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets and tactics that violate every principle of civilized warfare. They appear to consider total destruction of enemies a normal outcome of conflict. Recommend immediate extermination before they can spread their barbaric practices to other systems. End quote. The room fell silent. Finally, Admiral Dongwoo spoke. So they want to destroy us because they think we are too dangerous to live. Yes, Hanul replied. And the Valkyrie want us to save them because they think we are too dangerous to defeat. Also, yes. Dongwoo turned to President Lee. Sir, it seems we have accidentally convinced the galaxy that humans are either their salvation or their doom. There is no middle ground. President Lee studied the faces around the room. These were good people who had spent their lives trying to make the world better and more peaceful. Now they were being asked to become the monsters that alien nightmares were made of. Then we become what they think we are, he said finally. But we do it on our terms. We save the Valkyrie, we stop the hegemony, and we make sure the galaxy understands that Earth protects those who cannot protect themselves. And, if they refuse to accept that? Asked General Yang. The president's expression hardened. Then they learn why we call our planet a death world. Dr. Kim Hanul rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the computer screen. It was 3 a.m. at the Seoul Deep Space Communications Array, and he was alone in the control room. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he could not leave his post. Something strange was happening in space. The radio telescope had been picking up an odd signal from the direction of Vega for the past 6 hours. At first, Hanul thought it was just space noise or maybe interference from a satellite, but the pattern was too regular, too purposeful. It repeated every 17 minutes and 23 seconds like clockwork. Hanul adjusted the filters and amplified the signal. What he heard made his heart race. Hidden beneath the static was something that sounded almost like music, but not human music. The tones were wrong, the rhythm alien, and underneath it all was a sequence of numbers that followed mathematical patterns he had never seen before. He called his supervisor, Dr. Park Minji, even though it was the middle of the night. She arrived at the facility within an hour, her hair still messy from sleep but her eyes sharp with curiosity. "Play it again," she said, leaning over the console. The signal filled the room with its eerie melody. Minji frowned and shook her head. "This is not natural. Someone is sending this on purpose." Hanul nodded. "But who? There are no human settlements near Vega, and the signal is too strong to be coming from Earth." They worked through the night, trying to decode the message. The entire mathematical sequence was the key. It started with prime numbers, then moved to the Fibonacci sequence, then to something more complex. It was clearly designed to show intelligence, to prove that whoever sent it was smart enough to understand advanced mathematics. By dawn, they had translated the first part of the message. It was coordinates, star maps, and what looked like a crude attempt at communication using basic symbols. But the second part was different. It was in a language neither of them recognized, but somehow, it felt familiar. "Call Commander Park Ji-won at the Defense Ministry," Minji said. "This is bigger than astronomy now." Commander Park Ji-won arrived with a team of military linguists and cryptographers. He was a serious man with gray hair and sharp eyes who had seen too many wars. When he heard the signal, his face went pale. "That language," he said quietly. "I have heard parts of it before." "Where?" Hanul asked. "In our old TV shows. The science fiction ones from 20 years ago. Someone created that language for a show about space wars." The room fell silent. Dr. Song Yoon-ho, the head linguist, began working with the old TV scripts. Within hours, they had a partial translation. What they read changed everything. The message was a desperate plea for help. It came from a species called the Valkyrie, who lived on worlds near Vega. They were being attacked by something called the hegemony, a vast empire that had already destroyed dozens of civilizations. The Valkyrie were the last free world in their sector, and they were losing the war. But the strangest part was why they had contacted Earth. The Valkyrie had been intercepting human radio and television signals for decades. They had watched human movies and TV shows about space wars, alien invasions, and galactic empires. They thought these were historical records. "They think our science fiction movies are documentaries," Ji-won said, staring at the translation. "They believe humans are experienced galactic warriors who have fought in space wars for centuries." The Valkyrie message continued. They had seen humans fight impossible odds and win. They had watched movies where humans defeated alien empires. With clever tactics and stubborn determination, they believed Earth was home to the most feared warriors in the galaxy, beings they called Deathworlders because they came from a planet so dangerous that it had forged them into perfect soldiers. The message ended with star charts showing the hegemony's expansion pattern. The alien empire was moving steadily toward Earth's section of the galaxy. Even if humanity did nothing, the hegemony would reach Earth within 50 years. "We have a problem," Ji-won said. "These aliens think we are something we are not. But if we ignore their message, we might face this hegemony alone in a few decades." Dr. Lee Seojin, a xenobiologist who had joined the team, studied the biological data the Valkyrie had included about their enemies. The hegemony forces were strong and numerous, but they seemed to follow very predictable patterns. They attacked with overwhelming force, but never used tactics that humans would consider normal in warfare. "Look at this," Seojin said, pointing to battle recordings the Valkyrie had sent. "The hegemony fights like they are playing a game with rules. They line up their ships in formations and attack directly. They give warnings before they attack. They even let civilian ships escape before destroying military targets." Hanul laughed bitterly. "They fight with honor." "Exactly," Seojin replied. "And that might be their weakness." The team worked for 3 days straight, analyzing every piece of data the Valkyrie had sent. The picture that emerged was both terrifying and hopeful. The hegemony was vast and powerful, with technology far beyond anything humans possessed. But they had never faced an enemy that fought dirty. The hegemony had conquered world after world using the same strategy. They would arrive with a massive fleet, demand surrender, and then either accept the planet into their empire or destroy it completely. Most species surrendered immediately when they saw the size of the hegemony forces. Those that fought back used traditional military tactics and were quickly overwhelmed. But humans had developed their military thinking on Earth, a world where everything was trying to kill them. Human tactics assumed the enemy would use any advantage they could find. Human strategies were built around the idea that war was about survival, not honor. They have never fought anyone like us, Jiwan realized. They expect their enemies to fight fair. The final part of the Velkari message was the most disturbing. It included recordings of hegemony leaders discussing Earth. They had also been intercepting human transmissions, but they interpreted them very differently than the Velkari did. The hegemony leaders called humans feral Deathworlders and debated whether Earth should be destroyed immediately or studied first. They were fascinated and horrified by human entertainment, especially the war movies and violent video games. They could not understand how a species could imagine such brutal conflicts and call it entertainment. They think we are monsters, Minji whispered. Maybe we are, Jiwan replied. But maybe that is exactly what the galaxy needs right now. The team sent their findings to President Lee Minho, who would have to decide humanity's response. Would Earth reveal itself to save a dying alien civilization? Would they risk everything based on the desperate message of creatures they had never met? The Velkari's final transmission had included one more piece of information. The hegemony, fleet heading toward their world, was not their main force. It was just a scouting group. The real hegemony armada was thousands of times larger. As Hanul watched the last stars fade in the dawn sky over Seoul, he wondered if humanity was about to make the biggest mistake in their history, or if they were about to become exactly what the galaxy feared they were. The aliens' SOS message had reached Earth. Now the Deathworlders had to decide what to do about it.